Hi, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. I'm super thrilled to welcome Steve August to the first version of this. And hey, welcome, Steve.
Hey, good to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Okay, super. All right, I first became aware of Steve when he was the founder of a digital and mobile qualitative platform called Revelation. That was years ago. Was ultimately purchased by Focus Vision, and since that time, Steve has been an executive and a board member and a coach for many startups and companies along the way. And I've really appreciated the insights that you've posted on LinkedIn and elsewhere about how to build and grow businesses in our space specifically. So super exciting. Now, last October, before I turn it over to Steve, I'm going to pontificate here for a second, but last October, Steve and I had an opportunity to have dinner with a couple of other luminaries, Tom Anderson from Odin Text, Kevin Lonnie from KL Communications. That was, I think, at the Insights Association Corporate Researchers Conference in Orlando. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's been some time, but over the course of dinner, I discovered that you have a really, really cool story in music. I wanted to impress you with what I had done previously, but quickly realized I was trumped because you shared your story about the music that you played back at Brandeis in a band. I think it was called Falling August. Is that right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Falling August.
I went
Pride of Brandeis University.
I went straight back to my hotel room and I checked it out, and I was totally blown away. And it became the soundtrack for my workouts for the next several weeks. So I have to thank you for that. But
awesome, amazing.
I was totally blown away.
So I'm
super excited about that because I've had a lot of respect for you professionally and now personally too. So super cool stuff. I've got a few quick questions for you if you'll indulge me.
I will absolutely indulge you.
Okay,
excited to be here.
Before we get into the cool music stuff, why don't you give me the story of your professional background and how you ultimately found your way into Insights and why?
Sure, happy to tell that story. Like a lot of folks who find their way into the industry, you don't really grow up like dreaming of being a market researcher or an insights pro. It's sort of something that you find your way to. So I, as you mentioned, went to Brandeis University, had an American Studies degree, which qualified me for almost nothing, but let me explore a lot of creative things. And so when I was coming out of school, I was doing everything from clay animation, video documentary, multimedia CD-ROM when that was the next big thing, Web 1.0 when that was the next big thing, business intelligence server installations and consulting when that was the next big thing. So I had done a lot of next big things from the 90s. And in along the way, I was also playing music, as you mentioned, and in various guises, first with the band and then as an independent performing songwriter. And so what happened is I met an amazing woman, and my wife, Kimberly. And so she actually was the real researcher in the family. She was the person with the master's in consumer behavior and was working for a design company, international design company called Fitch when I met her in the mid-90s. And Fitch really was the IDO before IDO really took over the design space.
Yeah, cool.
And yeah, so it was like, really, they were doing ethnographies back in the late 80s and early 90s before they really, got traction in the market research business. And so she was the one doing research, and I was the creative technology guy, and that's how we were going along until 2002 when we had our amazing kiddo. And at that point, I was actually working in museum exhibit design, of all things, because I had gotten a little bit tired of tech. I wanted to do something interesting, something positive, and museum exhibit design was really cool. It combined a lot of stuff. Great job in the sense of creative fulfillment, really lousy job in the sense of financial fulfillment. And so we had to make a choice when we had our kiddo and we decided to make her business the family business. She had left Fitch and been doing it independently for a number of years. And we said, okay, well, she can make money, and I can make a small fraction of money, the money that she can make. So we turned that into family business. I became the stay-at-home dad and the marketing support guy and the tech guy and the video editor. And so I helped to rebrand from Kimberly Daniels August to KDA Research, and we started getting gigs, not only for the in-depth that she was doing, but we started playing with some tech as well. And the way it started was I noticed that she was doing these in-home visits, and she would go down to the Kinko's at the time and create these elaborate journals that people would take, that she would send ahead, FedEx ahead, and then people would fill them out. And that the whole premise was that she needed to understand what the people were doing when she wasn't there directly observing. So it's right around the time that blogs were becoming part of the landscape, and I said, look, we've got paper diaries, we got web diaries, maybe we can make this a little easier, without all this hassle. And so we started playing with off-the-shelf blog systems, and we did our first project in like 2004, where we were just a pilot project, actually about parenthood and the journey between being an adult and then having your first kid, and like becoming a grown-up is what I call it.
Right.
and um and I remember the questions we had at the time. We were like, will they share anything? Will they open up? Are we going to get the real story? And of course they shared like crazy. I mean, and we had both the mom and the dad in the relationship, and it was just amazing. And we got this amazing insight into their world over the course of a week. And we were just like, man, this is almost as good as being there. In some ways it's better because we're able to do all these different things. And so we started talking about it at industry conferences, and people started coming up to us and saying, that's really cool. That's a whole new way of looking at online qual. Because at that point, it was really just companies that were replicating focus groups, either through bulletin boards or the initial chat boards. And this is like an ethnographic way to think about it. It's like, what's the mission? Understand people to answer business questions. Well, what if we could get really close to those experiences? I think we'd have a better understanding to fulfill that mission. And so people started asking us if they could use it. And it wasn't a very user-friendly system, especially research user-friendly, which is but I thought, I know enough about tech. I could probably pull something together. And so that's how Revelation got started. Is we had enough people asking, and there was a need. And so in 2005 and 2006, we built our system from the ground up and released it in end of 2006, and then started really marketing it in 2007. And at the time we were living in San Francisco, we moved from San Francisco to Portland. We got a bit of angel funding in Portland, and then the rest kind of took off from there. And I learned how to be this first company I'd ever founded, first company I ever ran. And so took it from idea to exit and took all the lumps along the way, and but came out with a great outcome, and people still using Revelation today. And it's just always great when I hear somebody pipe in and say, hey, they really love it.
Yeah, you know what? I love that story because so many people in this industry have fallen into it accidentally. Right. And I love the way that you fell into it because, there was sort of an opportunity that you saw, and you experienced that great insight of seeing that people are willing to share their experiences, and how you might be able to take advantage of that and produce an outcome that's useful for companies. So really cool story. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, and some of the connections to Falling August and what you might have learned in your creative days. But tell us a little bit about your super cool music days back then, your experiences there, and maybe the coolest story that you've got from that.
Oh, wow. So many stories. The band came together in 1987. It was three freshman guys who didn't really get on at first, but then did, and discovered we had something. We had, two really good singers, and I was a kind of creative guitar player. I was never great at like theory and being technically great, but I could come up with stuff. I could pull stuff out of the ether and make it do some interesting things. And we just started playing around campus and in the coffee house, and people dug it. And we more than anything, we dug it, and we really enjoyed, what we were able to create. And so we kept doing that, and we got better as a band. We started out with just the three of us, which we used to joke we were the Indigo guys, back when that was a reference that people would get. And
Sure.
then we added a drummer and a bass player, and we started to really push. We were sort of Mumford and Sons before Mumford and Sons was a thing. And
I think that's a good reference, actually.
yeah, yeah. I mean, everything that we loved about it. A lot of Mumford Sons has some of that stuff. So we started playing around the Boston scene. We played all the clubs there, and we got some pretty good gigs towards the end of our run. We opened for the Wallflowers in 1994 at a great club called Night Stage, which is long gone. But it was one of those nights where we were pretty much on fire. And the local reviewer was like, "Yeah, the Wallflowers were cool, Jacob Dylan and all that, but boy, that opening band was really something." And that was really cool. It was like, yeah, and that was before Bringing Down the Horse and before he went really, he hit his stride. But it felt like, there was that one night that I think maybe we were the better band that night. And but it was cool to open, to get that kind of recognition. And then, when I was a singer-songwriter later, because the band broke up in '94, and I kept doing it myself. I mean, nobody would ever call me as a real singer, but I could write and come up with tunes. And over the years, I had some really interesting experiences. I had people covering my songs. I had a couple songs placed on TVs, on a television cop show on Lifetime called The Division. So every now and then I still get ASCAP checks from that. And
You're getting asked
and
that's good.
yeah, it's every now and then a couple $100 drops out of the sky. I'm like, cool. And the some cool things. It played the Fillmore West. Well, it was just the Fillmore, because the Fillmore East had long since gone, and opened up with one of the woman who named Essence, who covered a couple of my songs, and got to play at the Fillmore and open up for Steve Miller on one occasion and Pat Benatar on another occasion. And it was just like, wow, this is like rock and roll.
Benatar.
Yeah, and she and Neil sounded good. Neil Gerardo, her husband and guitar player, they were good. What can you say? But it was like those moments were really, really a lot of fun, and just a crazy adventure through all that, through good gigs, bad gigs, all that. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And I've noticed that there are some old fans that are keeping it alive, posting
Yeah.
stuff about your band from back in the day and some material, and that's always cool. It's always a good ego stroke, if nothing else. So super cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm amazed. People, it's like, and these songs are 30 years old now, some of them, and they're holding up, and people are still like, yeah, I still love that stuff, man. It was like, people were really moved by it, and you put something into the world, and you just never know the impact it's going to have on people, how it's going to hit people, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, it's super cool stuff. So are there any maybe lessons or connections or um, something that you can connect from what you did creatively to your professional world in the insight space?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest lessons that comes to mind, and this was more when I was doing my own, being a performing songwriter, it was this lesson about getting up on stage and getting in front of people. And
Mhm.
I think this is a lesson that rings true no matter if you're in on a stage in front of a room full of people, or you're in a meeting room, or you're anywhere, is that you have about 30 seconds to a minute when you start to grab people.
Mhm.
And they're all with you for that 30 minutes. Like if you go up and present at a conference, they're all with you for that 30 seconds to a minute. Like, and you have that much time essentially to grab their attention, bring them into your world, and start taking them on a journey.
Sure.
Right. And one of the things that you learn, especially if you get up there and in front of people and all you've got you and your guitar, is like, you got to do that. Like, you can be good, you can be bad, but the last thing you can be is boring and uninteresting. And I think that's something that it sounds like, oh yeah, not everything's a performance, and I would argue that you have to approach it that way, whether you're pitching a client, whether you're pitching your employees or a team, whether you're pitching an investor. Is like, there's no, you have to grab people, you have to really think about it. And I think, in the market research industry, there is a tendency to maybe not to be so reliant and dependent on the data that the story gets lost, and the understanding that no matter what you're trying to convey, you're taking people on a journey. You have this opportunity to take them on a journey and to get them to someplace new, someplace transformative. And to me, that lesson has stuck with me. And there's a guy I used to play around in San Francisco when I was living there, a guy named Matt Nathanson, who went on to do some really good things, got on late night shows, and still doing it to this day. Really, um, really amazing performer. He was a better performer than his songs were at the time, but man, he could grab an audience and they were his almost immediately from like the get go. And he
Right.
just, and I just watched that and was like, that's amazing. That's what you got to do. Like, that's the lesson that you can take through the rest of life. So that's the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so powerful, especially in this industry when I think for so many years, um, the objective was to get the right answer, based on the right
Mhm.
techniques, with not a whole lot of thought about how to actually deliver that answer, how to influence the organization, just sort of relying on the facts and hoping that does the trick. But things have
Mhm.
certainly gotten better. I think from people like you and that sort of perspective, where it's not just about getting the right answer; it's about how you deliver it, and it has to be compelling. So, good stuff. All right, so what can you tell me about? I know you've been around and you've seen some things, especially in your coaching practice. Um,
Mhm.
what do you see as maybe some of the key things that are happening now in the research industry and maybe where it's headed? So a chance to pontificate here.
Yes. Well, the question at hand. I think what I see, obviously for in-person research, this is a super challenging time. Like, this is what I call a wall event, where you're going along and all of a sudden you hit a wall.
Hmm.
If you're in the in-person side of things, that it's a really tough thing to pull off right now.
Sure.
But but I always believe that there's just like really hidden blessings in crisis. And one of the hidden blessings, or not so hidden things, is like, ultimately it comes down to this: our industry is obsessed by methodology, obsessed by tools, obsessed by the latest tech. But ultimately, what we have to do, or what we're here for, is to help people make decisions. That's
Mhm.
it. Right. And how we get people there is just evolving, right? So the fact that analytics, like seeing SMR over the last 5 years start to basically say analytics is part of market research, that business intelligence is essentially part of market research, I would say that was like 10 years overdue,
Yeah.
maybe longer.
Yeah.
Because if we really want to step into that role, we got to think with that mentality, is that we want, you know, for as long as I've been involved in market research, the phrase "seat at the table" has always been like bandied around. We got to get a seat at the table. Well, the thing is, seat at the table. You get a seat at the table when you're able to like work at a strategic level and help people make decisions. You're a tactical function if you can't do that, and you don't necessarily get a seat at that table. So to me, I think all this is almost the the way the world is going is helping us, helping research as an industry kind of find its way to that again. Because I think when people use that phrase "seat at the table," I think they harken back to when, with Gallup and, back in the days of Jack Hanemichael, that was something that research felt like it was.
Yeah.
But then, it got increasingly commoditized over the years. And
Hmm.
so that is, to me, regardless of what happens specifically for methodology, specifically for industry consolidation, and you're definitely seeing that. Obviously, the big research companies have consolidated a lot of their units. Obviously, it's a different time for Kantar and those biggies, and the sample industry is obviously consolidated. Like we're gearing for this next phase where the machines are going to do a lot more of the grunt work, the factory work, and we're going to have to step up and do a lot more of the human and analytical work, or the actual delivery of true insights that move people forward in their decisions. One
Sure.
of the things that I always felt like, as a researcher, even though you're not, a classical researcher would never necessarily give a recommendation, but I feel like we have to start getting comfortable and stepping into that space,
Right.
because that's where you get a seat at the table.
Yeah, certainly I agree, especially as you accumulate the knowledge about the consumer. You have to take it to that next step because you're really the expert that has the knowledge that might inform that decision. So excellent. So last couple questions for you. First of all, as this is a podcast, are there other podcasts or other resources, maybe blogs or books that you might recommend, either personally or professionally, something that's just in your gut that, oh man, this is just awesome and I want people to know?
There's so many books, podcasts. I like How I Built This. It's always great to hear other people's stories about how they went from idea to outsized success. And I think there's always really important lessons in there. Um, the other For books, God, there's so many. I like the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, because it's all about reclaiming your focus and attention in a world that's you know where the best minds of Stanford and Caltech are coming out and working on hacking your attention.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So it's a battle for our attention, and I really like that one. I really like, on a great overall human level, this book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a little bit new agey. Well, in parts, it's a lot bit new agey, but these four agreements are like,
You live in Portland, right? So
yeah. So yeah, they hand it out when you get into the city limits. Um, but it's like foundational for relationships with others and for yourself. Like independent of business or market research, I would say it's one of the best. In a weird way, I say it's one of the best business books ever written, and it doesn't mention business once.
right.
And the reason is, business is just an interconnection of relationships. Like when you peel away the layers, it's all different. It's just relationships at work for a purpose. And book is The Four Agreements. It's all about navigating and getting strong in relationships.
Sure.
So,
That's great. I appreciate it. Okay, so one last question, and maybe this is just selfish, right? But I'm super opinionated about music, so I'm always interested to know this thing. Since this question can help you understand what makes people tick. So it's the classic desert island disc question. So you're stranded on a desert island. You've got three records with you. What are they?
that's a tough one. Um, the record that I wore the groove out growing up was the record, the Kids Are All Right, not the single, but the movie soundtrack by the
Yeah,
Who. So it has a mishmash of all their stuff. I would have that one, because that's like, I'll be listening to the Who for the rest of my life.
awesome.
They were,
Keep going. Mad love.
yeah, yeah, they were my band growing up, and I think right now I'd also have to put the Stones' Exile. It'd be a toss up between Exile and Sticky Fingers, but I think I'd go with Exile.
Cool.
And then, because whenever I would get down on my desert island being all alone, I would put in Happy, and I would get happy again. As I imagine. Now the third one's a tricky one, because I do feel like I have to do something a little bit more modern, or and I'm trying to think.
It's up to you, man. It's your desert island, so you don't have to
Yeah,
anybody here.
you know what I would probably do. I would pick some year in my teen life, or young adult life, and I would get the KTEL greatest hits record from that year.
Nice, nice.
Just to have the whole panoply of my musical evolution.
K-Tel. Wow, that's something you don't hear much nowadays. So
No, you sure don't.
great reference. I'll take it. Excellent. Okay. Any last words, Steve? Anything I didn't cover in the questions that I asked that you want to get out
No,
there?
I'm good. No, I think I've got everything out there that was meant to get out. But I really, I just want to return, you know, the the praise and the gratitude for having me be the first. I really feel honored, and I also just want to say I just having gotten to know you over the years, I really appreciate just the way your spirit within the industry, your spirit in life, and I just want to throw it back at you in terms of gratitude and appreciation.
Hey, thanks so much, Steve. I love it all. The work is awesome. The people are awesome. So, hey, it's easy to be happy about it all. So, super grateful for you joining us on this first episode. So look out for it soon. And hey, rock and roll research, that's what it's all about. So talk to you soon, Steve. Thanks so much. All right. All right. Bye.